Hey there, I'm chatting with Dean King about his new book, King Hit. Well, good to have you, Dean.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Yeah, so you've just written this book. By all accounts, it's been very well received. I guess it's the story of your life in and out of prison and life of crime and maybe misspent youth and also some redemption in there. Seems like you've turned a corner and you've reinvented yourself along the way. What could we expect from this book, would you say?
Well, you can expect humour. I had, for all its craziness that I lived, I've always been a larrikin in some aspects, so that stayed with me even after I had the big turnaround from rehab in 1989. Redemption, change, and just a general good story.
Okay.
I learnt writing the book because I was an illiterate. I couldn't read or write.
Is that right?
But what I did learn in the process of writing the book is I learnt how writing is an art. And I made sure by the time the book was finished that I had no more left to give the book, and the lady that was working with me on the book, she felt the same.
Yeah.
So, the end result of that book, it's the best I could have done.
Okay.
So I'm really happy with it, and it's getting great reviews, and people are saying things like it's a page turner. They couldn't put it down. They laughed. They cried. It appears to have everything for a reader to enjoy.
Do you feel like, reading it back, even passages and even the process of having written it, was that in some way cathartic? Did that give you some sense of closure or, acknowledgement to what you'd been through?
Not really, because I dealt with that at rehab.
Okay.
So going back over the experience that I've written about, it was more humorous, to tell you the truth.
Okay.
But there was parts of it that I got emotional when I was writing certain sections of it. There was certain times I was writing about, and editing also, about some of the experiences I had in prison when I felt really lonely.
Yeah.
And, I was fighting Aborigines, and I was by myself, and I was in a prison where nobody knew me in Brisbane. I was in Bogger Road, and so I was kind of, I was one out up there, and I found my feet, but that brought up a lot of feelings, a lot of loneliness and stuff until, I fought the people I had to fight, and I got identified for being a person that'd have a go.
Yeah. Okay. You mentioned loneliness. Is that one of the nagging sensations of being in prison, or is it fear? What would you say, really sort of typifies your emotions in prison?
Well, for me, that's all I knew. So, looking back, talking about what it brought up for me from a cathartic point of view, looking back now, when I was writing the book, I identified it back then as just anger and resentfulness that nobody wanted to stand by me, and I was fighting all these Aborigines by myself. But I look back on it now, and I seen how scared I was.
Mm-hmm.
I identified how lonely I was, and it was a really bad place. But back then, I only knew one way to survive, and that was to fight. So I never ever sat in prison and thought, I'm lonely, or I'm scared, or I've got fear. I I acted out of fear.
Sure.
I was always fearful, and I didn't even realise I was scared. If I wasn't that scared, I wouldn't have done the things I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I acted to survive and to protect myself.
I guess in amongst that, there'd be a certain amount of planning and management of your time to survive each week to the next. It sounds like you were probably pretty occupied with trying to figure out where you stood amongst the other inmates and trying to carve out, your survival plan amongst all that. Do you think that that's, something that you would say is the case?
Oh yeah, I always ended up around a good crew. I ended up around people who were very willing. I made sure I placed myself amongst people who had a lot of go in them. But when it was time to stand up with those people, I had to stand up too.
Yeah.
But I didn't intentionally do that. They're the kind of people I was just drawn to because that's who I was.
Okay.
So it wasn't I thought, I'll get into this crew they'll look after me, or I'll be better, I'll be safer here, or anything like that. I was just attracted to that pretty full on crew.
Yeah. Birds of a feather sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
you are who you associate with.
You mentioned a couple of times, Aboriginal or Indigenous Australians who are in prison. Did you ever consider that, obviously they were going through their own sort of situation in their own struggle? I suppose everybody's struggle in prison or in any situation of adversity is an individual one. Were you ever able to kind of mend bridges with those people in prison? I mean, at some point you must have.
Yeah, most definitely. I grew up with Aborigines,
Mm-hmm.
in Sydney. So I played a lot of football. And, most Aborigines I know, they love football.
Sure.
So I always got on good with Aborigines.
Yeah.
That incident that I was talking about with the Aborigines at that time, about that fearfulness and that scaredness when I first got to Bogger Road, that happened with white people over the years in other prisons too.
Right.
Like I was in prisons, like I'd been in Pentridge, I've been in Long Bay, I've been in prison up here, and so it wasn't just Aborigines. That happened with all shapes and sizes and nationalities, and So
Okay. So let's talk about a little bit about where you sort of finally dust yourself off. You decide you go into rehab, and you want to turn things around. What brings you to that decision? Obviously, you want to make things right with yourself and with maybe others that you might have affected with your behaviour or your decisions over the years. What brought you to that moment that you decided it was time to sort this out?
Well, I didn't go there to sort myself out. My motive for going to rehab was not a decision to change my life. My motive for going to rehab was to escape. So the reason why I went there wasn't the reason I had in respect to what I learnt regarding the change there.
What were you escaping?
Well, I wanted to escape to Melbourne. I was escaping. I knew I could run away there. Like I'd been in Bogger Road for nearly 3 years. I was in a maximum security jail. So, yeah, I didn't go there to change, but something happened when I was there.
What do you think that was?
I was confronted with who I really was.
Okay.
And it wasn't a nice person. And I didn't change straight away, and I bucked, and I was going to get all their names off the electoral rolls, and I was going to terrorise them and attack them and square up on them for what they were saying to me, and they were really hurting me.
Yeah, it sounded like you were faced with the truth of...
I was faced with the truth, and that's what I couldn't handle. And in the end, they broke me,
Yeah.
and I just cried one day, and I couldn't stop crying,
Yeah.
and I hadn't cried for so many years, and I felt so good after it.
Yeah.
I felt, fuck, it's like a weight's just come off my shoulders, you know. And then, and that's when I realised that, you know, it wasn't the person that gave me up, it wasn't the police officer that charged me, it wasn't the magistrate or the judge that sentenced me, it wasn't the screw that turned the key on me. I did everything.
Mm-hmm.
I did the crime. You
Yeah.
know, I did the lot. And after I come to that realisation, knowing that I was going to take accountability for my behaviours and actions and everything that I'm doing, I knew that I was never going back to jail because I had control. I wasn't going to make those decisions anymore. I was done.
Yeah.
I was completely done with that life.
Because you first went into prison when you were about 14, and then so when did you have this epiphany when you decided to finally let go of that person you were that was no longer serving, you know, any real purpose and or certainly no positive purpose for you? How at what age was that?
I was 27.
Okay, so from 27 you were a changed man.
Yeah, completely.
Okay, some would say that that's actually a pretty young age to have that awakening. So for about 13 years, you had it pretty tough in and out of prison and carrying on. You had an addiction there as well, you mentioned.
Yeah, I was on the heroin.
Okay.
But, you know, just not heroin, you know, pot, speed, anything. But I also learnt in rehab that drugs were not my problem.
Mm-hmm.
I was the problem. You know, all my life, you know, I thought drugs were a problem, but it was me as a human being.
What do you think was the essence of your problem? I mean, you know, you talked about having a pretty tough childhood by the sound of it. You know, a lot of people have tough childhoods, and I suppose, it strengthens them in a way, but obviously it overcame you and affected you enough that you were, you know, turned to a life of crime and whatnot. Did you know all along through that life that, you know, what you were doing was the wrong? I mean, you must have known the difference between wrong and right even then.
I didn't care.
Right.
I had no empathy. I had no compassion. I never felt that anybody ever cared for me. I remember when I was in rehab, people used to say, "We care for you, Dean," and I used to say to them, "Don't talk shit.
Right.
You don't care for me." I remember when the first time somebody hugged me, you know, I was like a Besser brick. You know, I was so detached from affection or emotion or feeling. But the truth is, I was lonely. I was such a lonely human being. I was a train wreck inside.
Yeah, I can imagine. Loneliness is certainly a nagging feeling, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you? I mean, obviously, you know, you've passed a lot of this on now, but I mean, or you've come past it. But do you ever feel that loneliness now, or is it?
Yeah, I do, at times. But I can identify it now.
Mm-hmm.
I can talk about it. If I feel lonely, if I'm feeling down, I'll talk to somebody.
Yeah.
You know, where once upon a time number one, I didn't have the ability to articulate the way I felt. And number two, I didn't have the courage to talk about the way I feel. I used to always worry about what people used to think of me. I was so concerned about what other people thought because I had such an image I created around myself to survive, where I don't need that anymore.
You mentioned courage in there, you know, the courage to speak out. You know, I speak to quite a few guys, and, you know, we talk about how men typically don't open up like we probably should, definitely should, and that it's, almost we feel like it's frowned upon somehow, and it does take that courage to open up about the way you feel. Is that something you would encourage others to do, or do you work toward, helping others to find that courage?
Oh, most definitely. If people feel that, they're concerned about what other people think, and they've got thoughts and emotions and feelings going around inside of them that are haunting them, or if there's holes in their soul, most definitely I would encourage to talk about it. But I'd also encourage not just to talk about it, try to articulate it and express, how you feel about it. Like, try not to blame people for it.
Mm-hmm.
Try not to externalise it onto the world. Just to say, I'm lonely today,
Mm-hmm.
or just to say, I'm really hurt, or I'm scared, or I got fear of, I don't know what's going to happen, but I got fear of the unknown today, or I feel vulnerable, or I feel inadequate, or I feel love, I feel happy, I feel at peace. Like, just try and, I don't know, that's worked for me. That identification of just I feel.
Yeah. I think it doesn't come naturally for a lot of guys to, whether or not they haven't learned those lessons or have that ability to say the things that you just did. I mean, we know that would certainly be very helpful for a lot of guys to overcome whatever they might be feeling. But I think it takes time and maybe a bit of practice and a lot of courage to be able to open up and make those admissions and admit to those feelings of. Because, we're men. We're meant to be rock solid and, have it under control at all times. And when you don't, I think it gets away from you a bit. Do you think that, as an adult, I suppose you'd look back on that period? I mean, you must have a lot of regrets, no doubt. Have you confronted, those regrets? Was that part of the process of healing, of making, these drastic sort of realizations with your own faults?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I've got any regrets, because I've admitted my wrongs, and I know I haven't been perfect. So, no, I've got no regrets about my past. I've asked for forgiveness from the people I've hurt.
How did that go?
Fine. It's amazing. Like, when I said I'm sorry, and when I got honest with the people that I stole off, or I robbed, or I did the wrong thing by, how they accepted me, and they just honoured that I was honest to say that to them.
Yeah.
So the thing that I was scared about, not telling people how I felt, it actually, when I started conducting myself in that way in every aspect, everybody kind of could relate to it, and they had empathy for me.
Did that surprise you, the ability of people to forgive, because maybe forgiveness wasn't something that you practiced freely? Did it surprise you that people were so forgiving of what you might have, done or put them through?
Yeah. I think indirectly what it did, it showed me that, I need to look at my level of forgiveness also for other people that I feel that have done wrong by me.
Right.
So indirectly it taught me, by people forgiving me, taught me how to forgive others, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And there was a lot of freedom in that.
I bet.
And there still is. And I still conduct myself in that way today. Like, the stuff we're talking about today, this is 30 years on. I'm still applying myself exactly the same way as what I did in rehab, because it worked.
So how long did this book take you to write, Dean? Because, I mean, it's a thick book. There's a lot of pages there. This isn't something you'd knock out in lunchtime.
It's like a Bible.
Well, it is. What inspired? Well, what got you started? Did you were you writing notes down, ideas, jotting, journaling? What's got you started on this?
Well, I did very well in business, and but I made a lot of money, and I'm not bridging up about that, but the reality is I did become very, very, very wealthy in my life, and I learnt through becoming wealthy. I learned about my arrogance and materialism, and I used to evaluate this material world that I've fallen into, and I because I made so much money through the industry I was in, I didn't do it completely honest. And there was always that little part of me in my heart that knew I wasn't being honest in my business dealings.
Is this post-rehab?
This is after rehab, yeah.
Okay.
And I've never felt good about it. Like at first when I made all the money, because I come from nothing. So it was a big turnaround for me, to travel all over the world and, stay in beautiful places and fly first class and business class. And, this was like coming from nothing.
Okay, so you went to rehab, you've come out of there. We talked about how you were a whole new man, and yet you continued to, ill-gotten gains were a thing. I mean, is that something you've gotten past now?
I'm getting there, slowly but surely. I know in my heart that I'm doing the best with what I've got. I've still got to put food on the table. I'm not out there with, handguns in my hand running into banks or anything like that. But, I've got to live, and I'm a realist. I'm not doing anything where I'm that dishonest where I'm going to go to jail or prison. But the business world, I think it comes with a little bit of dishonesty in some aspects, in some way, and because I'm such an honest person in my personal life, I'll always be at conflict in the business world at some aspect. I heard a good saying, behind every great fortune there's a great crime, and I believe that's the case where economics is concerned. Have I completely gotten over it? I'm okay to live with what I do, but it's not what I want to do forever. But the catalyst to write that book wasn't just to get out of that kind of business I was doing. It was to get a message out there that there is hope. It doesn't matter how far down you are, or when you think there's no way out, there's something that, if you're open enough, might push you in the direction where it might show you a different way where you can take that road and make some changes. Yeah. And that's what happened to me.
Have you worked with other people along the way and tried to express, these lessons and the teachings that you've learned along the way? Have you worked with others to, help them in their journey at all?
Oh yeah, most definitely, and and probably not directly, but indirectly too, because I've helped so many people just interacting with them on a day-to-day basis.
How so?
Well, being truthful and honest is one thing,
okay.
And being genuine and being consistent, and being real and being sincere, and not saying one thing and doing the other. Like what you get is, what you see is what you get.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it makes sense.
So, there's a lot in that, for people. And, because I'm open and honest about things, and I'll say how I feel if I don't like something, or, if something doesn't sit right with me, I'll express that.
Sure.
But I'll express it not in an aggressive way. I'll express it in a calm, I feel this when you did this, and,
Yeah.
that hurt, or I feel a little bit disrespected by that. And
Do you think that that's because I got to say, I'm probably a little bit like you in that respect. I try and be calm and measured and reasonable, but I feel like that's. Do you think that that's changing a little bit? Do you think people are maybe a little bit sensitive these days compared to what they used to be?
I think they are, but I think it's a good thing, because I think it's evolution of the human psyche, to tell you the truth. Like, it's such a much better world we live in. I think people are more connected these days, and people have got more opportunity. And I think in general, people are more open and connected these days than what they were when I was growing up.
Yeah.
I think people will talk about things more.
Yeah.
Even when you say men should talk more, well, they're talking a lot more than what they used to.
Yeah, it feels like that, doesn't it?
It is, mate. And I think that's a blessing, and I think it's beautiful that we're like that.
Yeah.
Like, how far do we go with that? Well, water will find its own level with it all. But I think it's a much better world.
Yeah, I read a statistic somewhere, something like 7 men, I think it's a week, so 1 a day, suicide. Yeah, that's a big number.
Massive.
And, you got to wonder what brings a man to feel that that's his only option, to feel that helpless and desperate. Did you ever have those considerations in your time?
Yeah. Yeah, most definitely.
Mm.
I've probably had them more out here than what I used to have in prison.
Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. I'd never do it, but
No.
it's only a thought.
Yeah.
That's the thing I've learnt over the years. I'm not my thoughts. I'm just a thinker of it. I have so many thoughts a day. Well, I've heard it's estimate that we do have 60,000 thoughts a day.
Is that right?
Yeah, apparently. But if you want to think about the thought, well, that's a whole new realm. But it's okay to have a thought. You're not going to act on every thought you have.
Well, there's those that do.
Well, that's the issue. But personally, I couldn't do it, and I feel for the pain those people must be in, because they must be living hell.
Can everybody come back from feeling that desperate in their lives?
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Have you seen that happen before?
Yeah, I've seen that happen before.
Yeah.
Yeah, people can come back from it. People can come back from anything.
You reckon?
Yeah, most definitely. If I think it comes back to the will and the courage you have within yourself,
Yep.
to want to, overcome hopelessness, or overcome feeling there's no way out. And that's the beauty of doing it tough in life for me, that I'm just happy that I've got a point of reference. Even going through tough times that I've gone through, I've still got a point of reference where I can draw on my strength of how I used to live, being in cells and, feeling
worthless.
Yeah, had really low self-esteem.
So for a person who turns the final page on this book, what would they walk away with, do you think? Did you set out to have an intention, or to give, leave someone with a thought or a message that, they might benefit from in this book?
Well, the feedback I've got so far is it varies. Everybody's has taken something different out of it. Did I have did I personally have a message? Tell you the truth, there is a message in it, but I just wanted to write well.
Yeah. Okay.
And I wanted to learn the art of writing well.
You feel like you accomplished that?
Oh, most definitely I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Think you'd write another book?
I'm writing it as we speak.
Is that right?
Yeah, I won't stop.
Okay.
And I'm self-publishing it also.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a job, but yeah, I'm big enough and I'm up for it, and yeah, I'm keen to keep going with it.
Well, yeah, it's an art, isn't it? I mean, no doubt, you've got your first book right here. No doubt you've learned a ton of lessons in that, and the art and the skill of writing in itself is, it's a real craft. It's fascinating.
It is a craft.
Yeah.
And, the lady that I first worked with, she, I thought she was going to write the book for me.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, I'm not going to write it for you, Dean. She said, but what I will do, she said, I'll teach you how to write.
Okay.
And I said, I'm a fast learner. I'll learn it. I said, if you're prepared to teach me, I know I'll master it. And the book speaks for itself. Anybody that reads it,
they're going to enjoy it.
They wrap it.
Is that right?
And I wrap it. I think it's I think it's funny.
Good.
Like I get a laugh.
Well, if you didn't enjoy it, then
I loved it.
I
love writing it.
Yeah.
And my editor and I used to, even 8 or 9 years down the track, after 9 or 8 edits, we'd still just start pissing ourselves laughing.
Is that right?
At the scenes in it, And I'd say, does this ever stop? And she goes, no, well, I still think it's funny, Dean. And I go, oh, I think it's funny too, certain scenes in it,
Well, you're going to have to think it's funny for anyone else to think it's funny.
Well, I don't know, maybe. But, yeah, that's just how I feel.
Did you, when you had this published, did you sort of just go from the first page and read it all over again?
No.
You never did?
I occasionally flick through it.
Yeah.
At night. Because it's a big achievement, mate.
I bet.
It is.
Yeah.
It's huge. It's a massive achievement, and I'm very proud of it. And I've left a written legacy
Sure.
for superseding family members.
Right.
That's huge for me. Like grandkids, other children that comes along, they can see where the bloodline started and how it started and why it started and what I did and how I turned it around and how I lived. So, yeah.
How do you think they'll feel about their granddad?
I think they'll be proud of it because it's honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like there's no shit in it. Like it's fair income.
Yeah.
I don't sugarcoat anything. It is what it is. Like, I've got empathy and compassion for people, don't get me wrong, and I do think of other people, like I'm not callous anymore, or I'm not that detached from other humans anymore. So I'm well aware of how other people feel, but you can't make everybody happy. There's always going to be some people that it's not going to resonate with, or they're going to say, come on, mate, that's a bit full on. Like there's a scene there about a bloke in a wheelchair. I won't go into it too much, but that could be looked at, as a little bit callous. But back then, he was a lunatic. He was a mad junkie. And he lived by the sword, and he ended up the consequence was he ended up living a life pretty much by the sword in a wheelchair, because how he used to act was crazy.
Wow.
He ended up going under a semi-trailer one day in a motorbike chase. So, he was mad, but that could have happened to any one of us who grew up around the areas I grew up with and the people that I associated with.
Mm-hmm.
I could have been in a wheelchair. There's a lot of places I could have ended up.
You happy with how things turned out for you?
Yeah, very happy.
Yeah.
Very happy.
Good.
I have my struggles. I still struggle.
You do?
Yeah. I still worry. And I've probably got nothing to worry about. But I don't know why, mate, but it's still...
It's a good place to be.
It is, because I'm in touch with it. I'm not in denial of it. I still have my fears, I still have my apprehensions and uncertainties, but I'm alive. I'm human. So...
And you've written a book
I've written a book.
that you should be very proud of.
I am, mate.
Dean, it's been a pleasure to chat to you, man.
Thank you, my man.
Yeah.
It's been good having a yarn.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to reading this. I only wish I'd read it before we met, but...
Well, you know what? That's a present from me to you,
thanks,
mate.
man.
You take that book.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it'll
No
be the next
problem.
book I read,
Yeah.
and I'll let you know what I feel about it.
Yeah, and so after you have a read, you'll get a better insight into me.
Yeah.
And into my life, and
Well, we can chat about it again.
oh, why not? I love having a chat.
Me too. Good to meet you, man.
You too, my man.
Yeah, pleasure.
You too, bro.
All right. Dean King. Good stuff, man. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
coming in. Nice to chat.
Yeah, you too, bro. Very nice.